All right. Good evening. Good evening, guys. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Let's see. Okay. So I hope you guys can see my screen. Um, yeah, I'm trying to open up the chat so I can see your messages. All right. Okay. So I hope you've been I hope you've had a wonderful time. Of course, we've reached the end of the training for the UI UX track, and I'm very sure that most of you had a fun time learning with us. Of course, if you have any questions, always ask your questions. You can ask your questions here on the chat. You can also ask your questions on Discord. I have come to realize that the activities on Discord are quite not really, I mean, you guys are not really participating or collaborating enough. But that's fine. I mean, what we have to do on our part is to try as much as we can to fill up that gap. For now, we are simply going to we're going to just take a look at, the simple case study sample we have here. I think there was actually a level of confusion, when we asked you to come up with something, to come up with a case study, basically, as regards your task 2. Looking at some of the tasks, I could not even comment. I think Amaka also had issues with giving feedback because, it was obvious that most of you did not really understand what was asked of. I'm going to explain, and I'm using this example, not the example with a bunch of images. I'm using this example, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter how you choose to arrange or design it. What matters the most is basically, the contents, the content and the topics, like the way you structure it, matters the most, not necessarily the design, right? So that's why you see we have an example here. But before we talk about that example project, let's just look at the framework, right? Let's look at the framework that was applied here. Yeah, let me increase the size of this. Okay, so we're really going to make this class very interactive, right? I really want to understand where most of you are having issues. I can also see that we have less participants on this call, just 16 people. And I don't think, Amaka, please, can you do me a favor? Stop the stream if you can hear me. Just pause the recording. Um, Thanks, guys. Yeah, so whenever you are on a call or in a meeting, I think I would advise, you go ahead and drop as many messages as you can so that others can, get that notification. I understand that, you should not be reminding people of, lectures, but sometimes I think it's good when you have, so that you don't have, or so that others would not give you so much, stress by asking a lot of irrelevant questions, right? So that's the major reason why I think it's a good idea to always, ensure that you have so many people on that call learning alongside with you. Okay. Yeah. So back to what I was trying to explain. I said earlier that when you are asked to work on a case study, basically what you're doing or what you're asked to do is not the design. It's not always about the design, right? And that is why I really recommended this template. I know I recommended 2 templates. That's because I know that one, the other one looked easier in terms of the amount of pages, and you might find it easier to use. Yeah, sorry, I have to turn this off. Okay, so yeah, you might find it easier to use. And I hope you can still hear me. So, but using this template, I'm going to really explain. So just take a look at the way this is structured, right? The first thing we have here is basically your first page, showing the name of the case study, right? And the next thing we have here is the context. Now, I think that is something you need to understand. So the term context here basically describes what you're working on, like what is it about, right? What is the problem, the need, and the opportunity, right? What are the goals, right? What are the goals of this, what are the goals of this project or this case study? What is the context as regards, the project constraints, the market validation, and, other inputs that, can go into the, the overall context at the end of the day, right? So then what is your process? How did you approach, solving this problem, right? Did you approach this problem by conducting interviews? Did you approach this by, probably just sending out questionnaires, or, did you approach this by just researching yourself, right? That's also a process. And they are not really referring to the design process, So I think that is something that we should clarify here. When you're working on, when we're talking about the process of, UX, is different from the process of your, UI implementation, right? We're not asking you why you choose to use a footer in one part of your page or your app, and why you decided not to use a footer in some other aspects of your app. Like, that doesn't matter at this point, right? This is basically UX, right? User research. And the importance of the case study is for someone on the team or the entire company to really understand the purpose and the results from the research that was conducted by the research team, right? Okay. And the next thing we have here is the research insights. Now, the research insight, I think they are basically descriptions, right? So as you're doing the research, you probably spotted important issues, patterns, needs, requests. So things like the user stories and the job stories, like what exactly did you find out, that user A, or like let's assume we interviewed John, right? So our insights must not be one page, right? Your insights can be multiple pages, right? So you can have maybe you interviewed 3 users, for example. So you can have 3 different sections saying, okay, we found out that this happened. We found out, so we can have insight 1, insight 2, insight 3, right? And this is a very simple template that, you just work with this and it gives you something really practical. So this is a framework, basically, right? This is a user case study. This is a case study framework. I would refer to this as a framework. And then you have the design brief, right? So the design brief is basically, at the end of the day, these are the things you are, trying to focus on. These are the most important things you're trying to focus on. Let's assume during the research that you conducted, during the insight, you discovered that maybe a specific user said they wanted, they wanted this or they wanted that. That's what you put in, as maybe your MVP. So you can say, okay, these are some of the most important things, that was spotted here. The users kept requesting for a certain feature. Maybe you interviewed 5 users and 3 users said, okay, they would have, preferred if you have this specific feature, right here. Okay. So I think if you have 3 users request for that feature, it shows the level of importance, of that particular feature. You don't just add any feature because everyone said they wanted this, right? So let's assume you conduct a research, you're trying to build let's assume an healthcare product, and you have one user say they want this kind of telemedicine feature where they can actually contact or get in touch with doctors, vetted and verified doctors on the platform, and the doctor would tell them the prescriptions or give them prescriptions or tell them the drugs to take. If you conducted 50 research, let's say you conducted 50 interviews with of course 50 different participants, and you have 2 persons say they want that feature, that is not enough reason yet for you to have that feature. So you have to always check, like, what is the percentage of people that are requesting for this? What's the level of importance, right? Is this our primary focus? Do you understand me? So based on the percentile of 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 users or potential users you've interviewed, telling you that they want this feature. I think that's enough reason. That's something you need to really consider before finally implementing that feature. And always remember that during that interview process as well, you also have to be sure that the people you are currently interviewing are willing to even pay for the solutions at the end of the day, because you don't want to spend time and money building a specific feature, and at the end of the day people are not willing to pay for that feature. So I think this is kind of when you get to realize that the point of the UX or the research is not focused on your design, right? Of course, your design would be important at some point, right? It's basically focused on how you can understand the user's problem and then align that problem with the business values, right? The business, in the sense that a user might say they want the telemedicine feature, but for the business might not have the necessary resources to pull that off, right? So you always have to consider, okay, do we have the team to build that, right? Do we have the team of engineers, of designers, of product managers to build that? This is what the users want. Of course, we have that, written down. We discuss with the executives or probably the stakeholders in charge of, the delivery of that product. Can we build this? Even if we cannot build this, can we build a minified version? Can we come up with something? Can we come up with something that at least solve the most basic problem, right? Before we decide to improve on that implementation, right? So I think you always need to understand that if you focus 80% of your attention on just the design, you might end up coming up with something, on the design angle. Meanwhile, your engineering or development team might not be able to pull that off at the end of the day. So we're looking at a lot of people. Of course, the users always in front, and then other stakeholders like the designers, the engineers, the even the company as a whole, right? If they can even afford to sponsor the development of that project. So that's the point of the research. So let's take this again. Let's just look at it from this angle. First, you have the context, and your context is a combination of both the problem context, the goal, the major project context as regards the constraints, the validation, market validation, and the other inputs you get along the line, the process, right? And then you get down to understanding. Understanding means you are actually checking for your research insights, which is basically referring to some of the observations, right? Some of the observations, what you've figured out. And this is also, I think some of you might know this as, I keep forgetting the name, but user pain points. Is that what you call it? Let me know on the chat. Sometimes I don't remember every single thing. Yeah, I think it's called the pain points.
Yeah, it's user pain points.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so user pain points, where you get to conduct some ask the users some questions. You have I think there's this empathy map thing that you can also use. Yeah, if that's what you're doing here, is also fine. Remember, I said this is a framework, which means I don't expect you to use exactly the same terms, right? So you can choose to use a framework where you have different terms for this, but it doesn't really matter. You must not copy another person's pattern. If you love that framework, right, it's fine to use it. But this is a framework recommended by Figma community, and of course, it is accepted and approved by the community. That is why I also recommended this. When we started the cohort program, there are a lot of case study patterns on Dribble, and is it on Dribble? I think on Behance or Behance. But I think one of the problem with it is they tend to make you think that the results or what they're trying to show you is maybe the design, right? So it is not the design. This is a perfect case study example. So you focus on the research insights, which is maybe you have your empathy map trying to show like the findings from the users at the end of the day. Then yeah, you have a conversion, which is you have your design brief. Basically, you come up with that brief, because the client in this case is not, the customers will not give you a brief. You come up with a brief based on your research so far. So always read this, right? So here you can write down what you've decided to focus on, right? And I'm still trying to remember the full meaning of this abbreviation, HMWs. Apologies, give me 1 minute and I'm quickly going to Google, do a Google search on that.
How might we?
Oh, yeah, yeah. How might we? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Because, I just did a quick Google search and I can see that it actually means a lot of things. Yeah, but how might we is one of that. Okay, I'm not really good with abbreviation. So how might we? Okay, that's nice. So how might we, do this or do that or implement this or implement that? Okay, so that makes sense. So yeah, so basically this is a design brief that you have to, come up with as the expert, as the expert working on this product or project. And then you also need to, yeah, so take a look at this, take a look at this template. I think I would also show the example at the end of the day, right? So on the explorations part, you have to focus on the concept and the concepts, right? So you have for each outline challenge, pick. Okay, so I would say show your exploratory directions. Okay, so it might be wireframe, sketch, sticky notes, and then you might also highlight the selected directions. Okay, okay. So I think we'll also check out an example. Then also for the results, yeah, so this is why we said you should use your task two as a baseline, because of course we did not want you to focus on implementing something new. We just wanted you to paste in your design in here. There's no point, spending time, coming up with something new. It is not, the priority at this point, because the assumption when you are working on this case study, in most cases, is that you've actually finished the project, right? In most cases, you've actually implemented something. But you also need to understand that you can you can come up with a case study even when you don't have the screens, right? You can definitely, maybe the results you are looking for is, coming up with probably just a wireframe, right? Or coming up with a solution that does not even require an app, or even a website. It can mean, I mean, you can come up with case studies when it comes to building up. When you're building a product, I think you should understand this. You must not, it is not every single product that requires an interface, right? Some users use products that work over an API. And it sounds technical, but that is the way it works. So some users use products that actually works over an API. So let's look at an application like a Mono. So if any of you have heard of a Mono, Mono is let's see, Mono. I think it's Mono HQ. I really loved what these guys, I really love what they're working on. We have platforms like Mono. I'm giving examples of platforms that I like. This is not any form of promotion, right? So this is Mono, and we also have platforms like Okra, right? So basically what these guys do is, I would say some sort of integration. So Mono helps businesses to access high quality financial data and direct bank payments. The users in this, regard, of course, can be anybody, using this solution, but the integration process is basically, carried out by the developers. So as a UI UX person or as a UX person, are you going to conduct a research on the kind of data that is required, to flow from the users, which is the developers, down to maybe the banks? Yes, of course. And when you're doing something like that, you are basically going to think of, okay, so what exactly are the users expect? What do the users want, which is the developers? What should the API look like at the end of the day? And you get to collaborate a lot with product managers, because there are lots of things you have to be concerned about, right? So what is the pattern? How do the developers work with this API? So you discover that you are not really building a UI specifically, maybe during the early days, but instead you're actually conducting your research as regards the data flow. So I don't want to confuse you in any way, but I will just show you something. So basically, your research at the end of the day might come up. You might come up with a result saying that, okay, our users, on the developer angle, when they are they want to be able to make payments, right? And when they want to make payments, from our findings and our research and collaboration with the team, we discovered that this is the type of data that they would need to use. And the data has to be structured. You really need to, when you start working on some kind of product, you discover that you begin to learn new things, even though you're not a developer, right? This is basically referred to as the shape of a data. And you should be able to get to that level at some point in your career where you understand that this is basically design, right? This is basically design. You've designed the shape of a data, and your design might not be 100% accurate because you're not a developer, but at least you have given the probably the engineering lead some level of some idea on the expectation in terms of what the data should look like, right? So don't be confused at this point. You get to that stage where you do things like this, and you begin to ask yourself, where is the design? You don't necessarily need to do design for some type of systems that you're trying to implement, especially when it comes to systems that has to do with integration, right? So let's leave this for now, but I hope you get the point I'm trying to make here. Okay, so then finally you have your testing results, and your testing results have to do with your final hypothesis or discovery, and the iteration if there were some changes made over time, and also the project impacts at the end of the day. So after implementing, making that new change or coming up with a new implementation of the platform or product, what was the impact at the end of the day? Did it improve the user sign up or the user processes? Did it improve the company's overall revenue? What happened at the end of the day? Okay, and you need to understand that you must not have every single thing here in your case study. So if you're building a case study that is not a real project, that is not realistic, you can't come and tell me that at the end of implementing your UI or your research, that the company generated 50% or the company had 50% increase in revenue. Come on. Yes, I understand you're trying to make assumptions, but your case study depends on what your case study would look like, depends on the kind of project you're working on, and it also depends on if it's just if it's a real project or if it's a test project or it's just a sample. So when you see a bunch of samples on Dribble telling you about the project's impact, if it's a real project, then yes, that is practical and that is reasonable. It means that we expect the designer or the researcher to have conducted and implemented that that case study probably a few months or a few years back, because you can't be giving us values when we are not, when you just designed it maybe a few weeks ago. It doesn't really work that way in a professional setting. Then finally, takeaways or next steps, right? So takeaways or next step means, okay, the key lessons you've learned, right, from what you've done, and also the future opportunities, looking at what you've implemented or looking at what the team have implemented at the end of the day. So a case study is actually something complex depending on the stage, the stage at which you're implementing that case study for. And it can also be simple if you don't just copy and paste values, but if you reuse the elements that are right for you, right? I noticed that a lot of people were just duplicating and editing and adding random text. I think one final thing you should also understand is your text should be simple to understand. And I even gave recommendations, right? I gave recommendations saying you can use Grammarly. So let's see, Grammarly, right? So you can use Grammarly. I'm going to give you a very simple example. So let's go down to, I think it's, I can't remember that website again. I gave it to you guys on, yeah, goodbrief.io. Okay, good. So let's assume, that we have a UI thing here. Okay, websites. This is not going to give us the kind of brief we want, but okay, website for technology company. Let's use food, generate. Okay, so we have a simple example here. We're a company that makes and distributes vegan pastries, okay? Our main product is made with attention to detail and served in your favorite dinners. Our target audience is young. Okay, fine. So this is not a bad description of a company. I'm going to drop this in here. So let's close this. All right, so now we have this description. One thing you might want to do is to say, okay, I want to come up with, I want to just make an assumption here. So let's assume there's a problem, right? So let's assume I am the client or I'm the customer saying this, and I say, okay, the problem we are currently facing is an issue with distribution, right? Distribution. Okay, we are currently able to serve only 10% of our audience, and we want to scale our services. So we're currently able to serve only 10% of our audience, and we want to scale our services to, you know, other locations. Okay, let's assume that, you know, the feeling here is that, you know, we need a mobile app and we need to push our business, you know, to the internet so that people can actually order for our products. So the assumption is that everything is currently happening offline, right? So we want to scale our services to other locations by leveraging the internet, okay, which is probably going to be a website or app. So now they are not sure. Let's see. Because we are a local company. Okay, so I don't want to make this too, you know, very, I don't want to make this overwhelming or, you know, cumbersome, but I think this is reasonable, right? So first off, you understand what the company is into. Most times you might not really get a complete detail, you know, at the top like this. You have to ask questions, right? So this is in a very simple example where you are dealing with a client, you know, not necessarily a potential user, as regards a product that your company choose to work on, right? Or as regards a problem that the entire market is facing, or that the entire population, or maybe a problem that some specific, you know, set of people are facing. This is focused on a company, right? And you know, you are invited as you know, a UX probably lead or consultant. You know, we want to scale this, you know, leveraging the internet. What can we do, or what should we do? You don't just jump into saying, okay, we're going to build an app, and you know, on the app we're going to have like maybe 10 different screens. You know, we have the login screen, we have the sign up screen. A lot of people think that is the way all these things work, right? But sometimes it's not the way it works. What you do is, you know, try to understand a lot of things from their mode of operation, you know, even down to how the company operates, right? Their company culture. You might choose to do some things as a designer or as a researcher, only to figure out that the companies, these are not part of their core values and this is not how they operate, right? We are not going to conduct or do that here. I'm just trying to make you see, you know, some facts and, you know, understand some things. It might be easy for you to say, we're going to build a website and we're going to sell, you know, the products, right? We're going to distribute these products on the website. That might be simple to implement on the website level, but you don't even understand the users and how they even perform their, you know, purchases locally, right? So these are some of the questions you should ask the company. Okay, how do your users, you know, purchase items from you? Like currently, you know, this 10%, how do they purchase this item, right? So this is just an example. I basically will not start from here. You know, I would have to ask some questions as regards the company itself, but let's focus on, you know, some details from the user. So how, let's call this the purchase model. So I need to understand the purchase model, right? You know, a lot of autos or out questions. So how do the users purchase your items? You know, how do you ship your items? So shipment models. So while you're asking these questions, you'll get to understand like, you know, the timing, right? So when somebody make a purchase, how many minutes or hours, you know, would it take to deliver these items? You know, the shipments or the logistics, you know, how do you currently, you know, work on the logistics side of things? And Oh, not logic. Oh, this is a mistake. So logistics, right? So you see that a lot of other things are coming into consideration. Then finally, you've understood the so I can see that our main product is made with attention to detail and served in your favorite dinners. Okay, so maybe you can also start by also understanding the cost, because the moment you hear attention to detail, then I think cost is something you should also consider. The cost, the costing, and also the cost expectations, right? Because it's possible that the problem that this company is really facing is not the fact that they can't even reach more people. It's probably the fact that the audience that they are currently targeting is not, it's maybe they are the only ones that can afford the product, right? So there you can look at the current 10%. From that 10%, you begin to check some things like, okay, their location, their gender, their age group, right? So there are lots of things you do in here. Their location. This is just a very bare bone example. This is not. I mean, there are a lot more that you can do. If you want us to have a session where I would interview someone and you see what the process looks like, probably on a real product or maybe on a dummy product that we can build up, then, we can do that. But yeah, take a look at this. So we have 10% of, people currently, let's assume their market is, they are targeting, I think they said vegan, right? So, okay. All right, so, and I don't know, I hope I'm not spelling this wrongly because, yeah, okay. So let's assume that, you ask for their current target audience and they say Lagos, Nigeria, right? And then maybe there's a way to get some metrics on the amount of, people under this category in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's just assume there's a way to get that metrics. And maybe you discover that there are 3 million people, right? 3 million people. So their target for now, is that 3 million, individuals, and they're only able to get 10%, right? Which is basically 3 million times, 10 divided by 100. So, am I correct with that? I think yes. So you are able to get that 10%, and then you begin to take a look at that 10%. Okay, so the 10%, what is their current location? Are they the set of people that can afford it? Are they people that just love what they do, like love what the company produces, right? So are they working or purchasing items from this company because of the location or because of the love of the product, right? Or is it because this is more appealing to their age or their gender group, right? Sorry, to their gender or age group. So these are some questions that would make you really understand. And of course, maybe we are beginning to even dive so deep. You might be asking yourself, oh, this is looking more like a product, a product thing and not necessarily a UI UX thing. Remember that during your training, we had a session where we also, introduced some things related to product management. I don't know if you all were in that session, but it was intentional because you are going to be working with the product managers a lot when it comes to user research, right? So you see, from this detail, you are able to understand some things about the 10%. Then the next thing you have to do is, look at the expected, the expected age group and gender and location, and you can decide to interview, let's say 50 potential users. I mean, 50 is small in some cases, right? So sometimes you spend a month or 2 months with just interviews, having multiple meetings, trying to understand, for the other audience, the people that are not, purchasing from this company, what are the pain points, right? What are their expectations? So what are the pain points? What are the expectations? And yeah, so you ask them if they are willing to pay for it, right? Are they willing to pay to pay for the product if there is a solution to their problems or their concerns, and if that solution is provided at a given cost. All right, so this is just something very simple. This is not organized right now. It's not properly arranged, right? I'm also trying to use this as an opportunity to show you how you can ensure that you are fixing up these things. You see, you can't be perfect all the time when you are writing some of these things. you just try as much as possible to ensure that whatever you're presenting, I advise you to use these tools because Figma would not, I don't know if Figma has a plugin for that right now, for correcting mistakes. I don't know, but this is something I use all the time. I use Grammarly a lot. And, at the end of the day, if I feel that, okay, I am reading this and this is not looking very good, I can use other tools like Quillbot. And there are so many other alternative tools, to make my grammar even more fluent, right? You have to ensure you're using a good level of fluency so that people can, read and understand what you're writing. Don't confuse people with your write-ups. Sometimes you might be the only person understanding, your write-up. So try as much as you can to ensure that others are able to read and, reflect on what you're describing. When I'm reading your case study, I should be able to imagine, the process and some of the activities and, probably even how the interview went. Right. So you have to consider some of these things. And remember, I said this is an example where you have a client or a company reaching out to you. Okay. So yeah, and that is one. Let's go back to this material so that we don't deviate so much. So once you're done coming up with these items, I can bet you, I think you're good to go, right? You're good to go. So you see, you have the set of goals right here. You have the metric you use in checking to ensure that those goals are met. So you can say, okay, this is the metric 1 you're using, checking to see that this goal is met. This is the metric 2 and the metric 3, and when we say metrics, it's just like a baseline to say, okay, if I am able to lose so amount of weight, it means I have gotten to this level of success, for my my workout program in the gym, right? So you are able to balance and checkmate your goals or your expectations based on some certain measurements or numbers or something. So I believe you understand that. Ask your questions in the chat if you don't. Yeah, so take a look at an example we have here. So this is an example project. Someone built a meal preparation website design. For some weird reasons, this is a mobile screen, so I'm assuming it's a responsive website. Oh yeah, okay. So this is a website design, mobile, very mobile friendly website design. And then we have the problem context, right? And the problem context is described right here. So I think maybe this is I don't know, maybe this was the previous design or the current design. I'm not going to check that, but you have the problem context. Then you have some details. You see the way you have some details about, okay, the current business goals and the problems they are facing, which is, I did not even check this before, explain this to you, but you see that there are some level of alignment, right? So the current business goal is, yeah, right here, and the problems they are facing. Then I think this is the process. Maybe you can start, working towards, following a process like this. Someone is unmuted. Please go ahead and mute yourself. So you see, you have to understand, follow this pattern. You understand, check the coverage, explore, and validate, which is what we've outlined previously. So you start by understanding this process, assessing and benchmarking the UX. So this is where you ask some users some questions and you get to understand the user. Based on the user feedback, you get to understand their level of loyalty. If they are getting some kind of loyalty, sorry, you get to understand if they are, maybe based on the feedback, some of them want loyalties, right? For me, I think this is basically, instead of using the term loyalty, I'll probably use discount directly right here. But I believe I understand. So I think maybe they're trying to, I don't think I would use this term here, by the way. So, but yeah, so recurring discounts, is this supposed to be far to manage? I don't know, hard to manage. Okay. So yeah, so of course there are some errors on this, on these documents, and it's making it hard to read at times. So they also want to be able to filter diets, and this is the feedback they are getting. We don't know if they're getting these feedbacks, from the previous app. I think so. I think they're getting this. So this is an assumption that there's already an existing app and you're trying to fix that, right? So you can follow this pattern. This is a very good pattern, trust me. You can follow this pattern, check out what the UX audits, so this is kind of like checking out the previous, the order flow. When someone is trying to order an item, this is the previous flow. And, after UX evaluation, the client agreed to move. service to custom hosting, which enabled a full range of improvement and new feature development. So what I'm saying here is that the previous website was built on, I think, WordPress, right? And I think that is making it difficult, to manage and to customize. I think I saw something around WordPress right now. I think this is it. So yeah, so what WordPress is not, I'm not trying to say WordPress is limiting, don't get me wrong. Please turn off your video. Jem, turn off your video, please. So I'm not trying to say WordPress is bad. What I'm, yeah, Amaka, please turn off the video. Okay. Sorry. I'm not trying to say WordPress is bad, but basically, if it's not implemented, by the right set of team or the right engineer, sometimes it can be very slow, right? And when it's slow, it's very bad. Trust me, very bad, because you have to wait for a long time, and users don't like to wait, basically. So you begin to discover that sometimes the problem is not just about the interface, but you see, the problem is basically from the platform that the website was built on. So if you don't know what the platform is, how are you able to notice this? And yeah, that is why some projects are left for some, advanced or some set of people that are able to figure this out. And I'm not saying you should, I'm not saying you have a limit to what you should be able to do, but you can research, right? The same way I learn, the same way a lot of smart people I know learn. We do a lot of research, we study a lot, we read a lot, we try to understand, things across multiple domains so that we can talk about them, even if we don't need to talk about it in such a great depth, but at least we understand what is happening and what the problem or what a potential cause of that problem might be, right? So this person is able to understand that, okay, it has a bulky US, a lot of items, a lot of, someone said he's raising his hand. Amaka, are we supposed to allow someone speak?
Okay.
Yeah, let's allow him speak. I think that is Idris, right?
I think it's Idris.
Okay, Idris, go ahead and ask your question.
Idris, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sir. I have some question based on the tasks we were given based on the user research. Some of the major problem I think I have is that I see a stakeholder playing a huge role when it comes to user research. So I don't know if I'm to be the one to set a goal, because in my own case, we are researching for the e-commerce. So I don't know the goal of this e-commerce. I don't know all these things. So am I the one to stand in as a stakeholder when I'm trying to have a case study? So I'll be the one to derive all these goals, business goals and everything. Then I will go ahead to do the research, then compare and contrast. Or probably I can look for somebody to, I don't know, I'm confused, yeah. In case so.
Okay. So I think I also mentioned that earlier. So I said, if you are given a project, so for example, what we are looking at here, this is obviously, probably from a company, right? This is obviously from a company trying to resolve some of the problems they are having. But let's assume you're building for a startup, right? The business has, their own goals, but when you're building for a startup, I think the most important decisions, on what to do is taken from the customers or the users, right? The users of that app or that website, right? So let's assume, Idris, you're trying to work on a case study, related to like a medical, let's say telemedicine app, right? And, of course, there's already a level of understanding that we need to build something around this application, around this type of system. If you want to understand what to build or what to design or what to research on, you are definitely going to be looking at the user as the primary stakeholder, right? And I'm not referring to the business, I'm referring to the product stakeholders here. The users is going to play the number one priority, right? So you want to build what the users want. There's no existing implementation, based on the assignment we gave you, right? And that is why I said I want you guys to conduct research. use a questionnaire. And I think some examples were shared. I'm not sure, but I think I have shared an example of a questionnaire that we worked on, on the group. And I remember asking the team to share that specific questionnaire. I think it was related to security issues or something. So of course, I asked them to share so that when you feel this, you would also understand and see what the questionnaire should look like. But I personally believe that most of you have seen questionnaires in the past, right? Or I said you can also conduct an interview via Zoom or Google Meet. Idris, did we mention that in the assignment?
Yes, you said we can conduct an interview. So it could be a form of interview, I guess.
Yeah, so from that interview, you were supposed to at least understand, like the pain point of that user, and then you understand what the user is expecting, which is the goal of the user, because we did not really give you a specific goal on a company level, right? So you can actually get that on the user's level. So the example I'm showing you here, that's why I said it is a different form, in the sense that we are trying to deliver this product or this implementation for a business, right? And they would use it, the users would, the users would be the customers of that specific business, right? So then you have to interview the customers, and if possible, also interview the business to understand their business goals. But when you are in such a setting that you don't really have a business to return to, you can then come up with, the goals based on the problems and the feedback you've gotten from your users. Is that clear? Or do you have any question around that again, Idris?
Yes, it's clear. But I have another. Sorry.
Go on.
If we are to, maybe as a freelance now, I got this client and he wants maybe the UX and the UI parts probably. So if I'm to conduct all this research, maybe I'm to go out there to look for people, on whose budget would it be? Like, I don't. So I'm trying to. So
definitely. Okay,
on the
finish up.
budget.
Probably
yes,
what?
I said, if I'm working in a company, will it also be on the company's budget, or probably it's my duty as a UX person to maybe that's what I'm paid for?
So no matter who you're working for, it's definitely on the client's budget or the company's budget. I mean, you are there to do the job. You tell them what you need to do. You don't need to. I mean, your budget would never go into any of this thing, right? I mean, there's no condition that would make your budget go into the work you are doing for a freelance, a client, or a company, right? And before you even embark on working for a freelancer, working for a client as a freelancer, definitely you should have a brief. And if you don't have a brief, let's assume it's someone trying to build a company or a startup, you should ask him some questions. Have you conducted research? You are trying to build an e-learning platform. Have you conducted research? Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done like this set of things? And this, you need to understand that this was, practically applied in what we are doing at Top Universe. We intentionally did not build a dashboard for learning, and a lot of people were wondering why we did not. We've discovered that giving you a dashboard is not the primary. I mean, you can have a dashboard and still don't learn, right? So the dashboard is not the problem. And as a matter of fact, we are also building a product for secondary schools, and we discovered that the platform for secondary schools to learn tech is more important than having a platform for people that are already out of school, because of the relationship you have to build with those schools. So there are some benefits of having a dashboard, but at the same time, you have to always weigh the benefits, like the upsides and downsides. What are the benefits? What's the implication in terms of timing and cost? You need to understand that none of these costing would ever be on you, right? You are a professional doing your job, right? And you should always ask questions to know if it's needed, right? Or if they've conducted a research already. Okay, so that's the point I'm trying to make here. Do you understand me?
Okay. Yes, thank you. And I also, the last question, when I was going through the templates, like the second template, because that was what I used. So I noticed that probably there are stages of research. So when doing a US case study, so I just want to confirm. It's not like, are we to just conduct one research, then we use that for the whole case study? Because at some point I noticed that the first has to go to the market to actually look at the pain points. Then they come back.
Let me stop you there. When did you join this call? Idris, when did you join the call?
I joined very early, but I was having a network issue.
Okay. All right. So I said, let me stop you there because I think I actually mentioned some of this and, so we don't have enough time. But yes, you're very correct. Now, user research does not end, right? So when you're working in a company on a product, you will continue to research at every point because something regarded as a pain point today, in the next 5 years, you have a new set of, you have like new users and probably they are more than the old set of users, and they tell you that this is not really our primary concern. We don't really care about this. There are always iterations. You're working with an agile, process and in an agile environment. So there are always changes, and you always have to conduct research before implementing those changes. So a quick example, I started using Microsoft Office Suite in I think I would say like 2005 or maybe 2006. I think like 2005. And what I was using back then, the Office package for the year 2003 is definitely different from what we have in 2000 like 2020 or 2016 or 2010 or 27, right? So things will change, and those changes is not just a designer and the developers just implementing any changes because they want to make it look modern. There's always a research that would happen first. So user research is stages, and the stages probably would never end. It is continuous, right? So these things will continue to change, features will continue to bump up, and the researcher has to play their part, the designer has to play their part. Things are going to change a lot, right? Things are going to change a lot. So looking at the example I'm using here, this is an example that show you the beginning and down to the end, which means this was implemented and it became functional, right? So it means that this person did not just sit down and design this before starting the project. This person started and finished the project completely before implementing this. And I also made reference to that. If some of you are here, I think I would even like it if you drop comments when we're saying things like this, just to show that no other person is having issues with this. If you understand what I've explained, and if you understand the question that Idris asked, which I think is a very nice and important question in a session like this, because you hardly have sessions like this, and I don't know if you understand how important this session is. But go ahead and drop a message in the chat. Let me know if you understand what I've explained. Let me know if you understand Idris' question, and let me know if you learned something from the questions. Okay. Idris, do you have any other question? Okay, so there's no response from Idris. So my assumption is that Idris understood my explanation. Okay. All right. So let's proceed. Are we still together? Drop a message on the chat. Let me know if you can hear me and if we can proceed. Okay. Go ahead and keep the chat busy. I don't know why you guys are just you're not responsive. Okay. All right. Good. Let's proceed. So now we've looked at okay. So now we've looked at the problem context. We've looked at the understanding, assigning and benchmarking the previous UX, and the next is we need to look at the areas for improvements, and we need to make changes based on the visual hierarchy, which is something we always make reference to. Before this session, I told Amaka that if we would have enough time, I would love to design a product, with her, live on the call. I would ask her some questions, and I would say the reason why I am doing this, presentation and this class instead of Amaka is because we're trying to optimize the time, right? And of course, by default, we know that I'm very fast when I'm talking. I think that's the most important reason. Yeah, because we're trying to look at how we can use 1 hour, which we've exhausted already. So you can see we have visual hierarchy, which is a problem, right? we have the clunky data, you know, of course, looking at this, someone is saying, sir, we can fix another class for that. Okay, let's proceed, please. So for the clunky scanning UX, this is just a problem as well. I don't think I would go with, this is one of the things I think you should also put into consideration, you know, write something that people can understand. I understand what they're trying to say here, you know, the UX and the choice of the items and the way things are arranged, you know, of course, cluttered, right? So you have to then try to declutter things and try to ensure that users are able to read through, you know, this set of items without being confused or without having something, you know, very complicated. So we have 50 shades of a button. Yeah, so you definitely have to, you know, make this more explanatory, right? So, but yeah, the idea is they're basically trying to show some of the 6 areas for improvement. And then, you know, we got down to the design consideration where we take a look at you know, some of the things we're trying to do, like we're trying to simplify the website navigation. We're trying to design consistent items, item selection behavior. The mail must have photos and be visual. I think that is very important, of course. And it has to be mobile first, you know, even 100%, right? It has to be mobile first. You have to reduce the load time, you know, by making the images even, you know, lighter. You don't need heavy images, you know. So the website speed has to be, you know, I mean, the site has to be fast. That is the load time, of course. And you also have to ensure. So there are so many things to consider, and you know, this consideration, of course, are based on the users. Imagine if your users, let's say you're targeting some users in you know, Osun State, for example, in some of course, I'm not going to say remote areas because your business might not even work there. But let's say you are trying to target some users in a specific area, and then you understand their level of you know, internet coverage and the network speed and all that. You can then decide to build your platform in such a way that you know, you have optimized network usage. You don't want a user spending 5 megabytes from loading one page or 7 megabytes from loading one page, because you also have to, you know, consider the cost on the user's part, right? Imagine a user spending 5 megabytes on one page. It means, you know, staying on your page or reloading your page 10 times is definitely expensive, right? So that's not something you want. And if you also take a look at the bold click, the bold click and also the top universe website, some of the websites I've worked on, the videos you see playing on those pages are very optimized. Like, you know, probably those videos are not even up to 500 kilobytes in some scenarios. They're very optimized. And the images also, you know, I have a bunch of tools for compressing images, you know, ensuring that the quality is also there. And you know, the quality, I mean, it's looking good, ensuring it's looking good, and at the same time you know, fits the page and is not looking bad in any way, right? So you have to take a look at the constraints, you know. So cannot be calendar based, cannot order less than 5 meals. Some meals don't have side dishes, and some meals have extra costs. Okay, so then you see we have yeah. So I think basically this is a kind of like I would probably refer to this as a site map, right? You know, from the shopping cart. Okay, so I think this is more like a scope, not a site map, because you know, we have like a scope. So for the meals, you have select meal. Yeah, so I still don't like this, and I'll tell you why I don't like this. You have to, when you're working on something, there's what we call, if you did any, you know, level of you know, creating charts or graphs or, you know, anything in school, there's what you call a legend, right? So and I'm speaking from the angle of an architect here, because I think it also plays a very big role when it comes to information architecture. You know, when you design something and you believe that everybody would not understand the shapes and the colors you use, try as much as possible to create a legend, you know, a simple legend. So we can put something like this, and then we can say, okay, we'll put a box, and you know, this box, you know, carrying this specific color means there's an action, right? So we can say this means action, right? So that text is small. Let me make it 40. So we can say this means an action, and we can say when you have another item, you know, with a border radius, let's use 50, and this looks like this. We can call this I don't know. I really don't know what, yeah, but I can call this, so I'm saying these are also actions. Okay, so I can refer to these as pages because they look like some pages and this looks like the action. So always try to, this is a legend basically. This is very, simple description. Anybody seeing this now would know, would understand what this diagram is trying to represent. And of course, I said this is not a sitemap because looking at this part basically might look like a sitemap, right? But these other parts are looking like features and functionalities. So I'm not going to call this a sitemap, but I think this person is calling it a scope and information architecture. I will not structure my information architecture this way, but if you have a legend, then this works, right? This works. Okay. And the reason why I'm saying I won't structure my information architecture this way is because maybe because I've worked on a lot of, I'm a solutions architect, right? And I do a lot of diagramming, and I don't think this meets, the. I won't accept this as an information architecture, except it has a legend and it is more descriptive. Okay, so we have explore. You can't call it an information architecture when there's no information, right? So you have the explore, which is where you talk about the concept, you try to break things down, to understand the home and the navigations, you try to understand the selection. So this is basically, a wireframe, right? And of course, you don't have to always use, you can always use pen and paper for this. I like the way that was, shown there. Then finally, you can then implement your design. This is probably when you're done with the high fidelity. Of course, as you can see, if you don't have a high fidelity, then you should know where to stop and don't copy random designs from Dribble. Then the key solutions at the end of the day, these are the solutions you're trying to, what? So virtual hierarchy, clunky scanning UF. Okay, so I think this is supposed to be like decluttering the US. Okay, so I think this is a template, of course. So I don't think this was properly implemented because you said the key solution. This is supposed to show the solution. Okay, this is the key issue reminder first. Okay, then before showcasing the solution. So my assumption is that the solution was described. Okay. Anyway, so the solution is basically fixing the issues, right? That is the solution. And I think that is what was implemented at the end of the day, right? So yeah, and this solution, the solution was represented more in a mobile version, right? So that's what you see right here. Okay, so let's not waste too much time again on this call. Finally, the validation, you definitely had users test this and you're able to rate their behavior. So of course, we didn't teach you how to use tools to do this, but there are tools you can use to check, when a user is using either a prototype or, the main application, maybe like the mockup, and then if this has been implemented, you can connect to a bunch of tools. And when they are using this, you see we have multiple variants here. When they are using this, you check if they are actually performing the major action and if they know what the action should do, right? So based on the items they're selecting, there's a level of heat map generated around there. So Michael has a question. Amaka, please allow Michael to speak so we can just finish up with this quick. Michael, just give me 2 minutes, right? So we have the attitudinal data where you get to interview those users again to use that solution, and then you see their attitudes around using that tool. And finally the meals review, so people are able to drop reviews, and you also see how people are comfortable dropping those reviews and what the review process looks like at the end of the day. So a case study application, this is just a very simple option. Imagine if you have an application where you also have to implement a dashboard, for administrators to manage these processes. It becomes a wider system. So you don't have to be scared about anything. You always have to start small, and your case study, you can spend 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months, or even years working on a case study if that application, runs across multiple years of implementation. So don't always be in a rush to create a case study. In order to get your first or land your first roles, we always advise you create maybe 1 or 2, right? And make it obvious that this is an example. Don't tell an interviewer that you've implemented a case study for a product that you built and is on Play Store if you did not do it, right? If you've done it, beautiful. If you did not, then create case studies for fun. And yeah, Michael, please, Amaka, unmute Michael so we can take his question and probably end the session already.
So, Michael, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening.
Okay, my question is, when building a personal project, and say for instance, I get to the testing phase of the design process, maybe like conducting usability study and research,
Yeah.
and then it's like of course it's a personal project I'm building because I hypothetically thought about it. Is it advisable to always leave that part of the design process out of a personal project, or we should like find ways on how we can conduct such research to add to our case study if it's a personal one we are working on?
Okay, so if it's a personal project as a UI UX person, I think it's ideal that you also follow the process of implementing something as a UI UX professional. So you are conducting you are building a personal project, except if you are the user of that, if you are the expected user of that project, right? In order to make your personal or your pet project reasonable, if you plan to use it as part of a portfolio, it's a nice idea if you have maybe your friends be part of that project in terms of like asking them questions and showing them what you've done, if it's something they love and if it's something they can use for fun, right? If you are the user, let's say you just wake up one morning, I want to design something and put it up on Dribble. I don't think you need a case study for that, right? Because I mean, everything, the case study you are writing is more like a template. Do you understand me, Michael? And if you also talk about the usability
Yes, I do,
test
sir.
and
Sorry.
yeah,
I say yes,
if
I
you
do.
also okay, if you also talk about the usability research and test, if you did not conduct it, don't write it. If you are designing a template or you're coming up with a template for people to use, yes, go ahead and implement that template for other people to use. But if you want to put it as part of your profile, so I tell people all the time, whatever you put on your profile should be something you've worked on, either as a pet project or in the official setting, right? And even if you do something as a pet project, make it known that it's a pet. I can't put if I am I've actually implemented a lot of UI designs, right? I've been doing UI for, I can't really remember when I started, but it's been a while, right? The last time I did a UI for a company officially was during my work at Abuja. I was working on a product for a government agency with the company, of course. So I built a mobile app. It's on Play Store, and I can tell you, I don't even have a case study for that app. Right, the app is currently on Play Store, but I don't even have any case study because I did not really want to use that implementation for a case study, and it was not really a priority for me because I transitioned from like design, art, and those kind of stuff into engineering full time, and it's been a very long time, and I don't see myself using it. I can talk about it, I can showcase maybe the engineering case study, but since I did not really do things like testing and all that, and I don't know how far the project has gone because it's been like 4-5 years and they've made a lot of adjustments. I can't talk about it. So your portfolio is meant to always be up to date. I can't use my website as a case study because I did not have users test it. So I designed it, I did what I liked. I did not really ask a lot of questions apart from asking Amaka and Emanuela if they love my website. That's not the best feedback because they will love my website, even if they don't. They just want to make me happy. Okay, so I will not say there was a usability test around that. Okay, Michael, do you have any other question? Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. So someone said the network has really been a barrier. Okay. Since the start of the class on my end, please, could anyone share a few significant things you've learned after the classes? I think you can go to the class resources and you have all the significant things you, the term significant. All right. So I will advise you catch up with it when uploaded on YouTube. Okay. All right, thank you, Idris, for that response. Well, yeah, always ensure you check out the class resources, everything we've done, and even the instructors, we've brought to teach you. I believe everything is significant to your growth. If you don't find it significant, you can also feel free to ask. I'm also sure that that is not the right term you wanted to use, but try as much as possible to use the right terms when asking your questions. Okay. Do we have any other questions, please? And I can also see, yeah, sorry, and I can also see that we only have 17 people on the call. This session would be uploaded definitely. So I can also see we had just 17 people on the call. This session was basically, to ensure that when you start working on the project, you at least understand, what is expected, right? And in most cases, the UX case study would be out at the end of the complete project, right? So we are going to be collaborating with the front end guys. We're going to have a different session where I would, build probably a landing page or multiple landing pages, and then we would have the front end guys join you on that call. I would go ahead to implement it. When we are done with your section, if you're a designer, we're done with your section. We'll show you how to structure your design, how to implement your design, how to transfer your design to the developers. You are free to leave the call. And then you have the front-end guys also learn and see how it is also, implemented. And then we also have a backend. So it's going to be like, multiple sessions, multiple live streams, just combined together. So we're really working towards that, and that is why you see that there is delay in responding to the previous task, right? So apologies for that, but we'll be making a lot of plans and trying to discuss with multiple people to provide some resources and, if possible, their time to see how we can show you what building a real project that will be deployed at the end of the day looks like, right? And we're also trying to reach out to people that would manage and review the process. We don't just want everything to be myself and Amaka and Emanuela. We want to make sure that we'll build a community where you will feel comfortable learning from multiple people and from multiple places, from multiple regions, so that when you find yourself on a team with someone from the US or someone from Israel, you will not be surprised, or you will not be overwhelmed. You will not be in shock, or you will not be waiting to see what they are doing, if they are better than you or not, right? If you learn well and you practice well, no one is better than you. They only know some things that you don't know, and they probably, don't know some things that you know. So you're always in an environment to learn and, build and, become a better version of yourself. So with that said, I think I'll be ending the screen share right now, and have a wonderful night, guys. Amaka, you can take it up from here.
So I think that's all we have for tonight. There's nothing I would like to add. Good night, everyone. See you another time. Bye.